Hey, hello, and welcome to another Fireside Chat. This is Fireside Chat number 40, I believe. We're at that age now.
You are much younger. I passed that age of
Yeah.
a few years ago.
No, but
Exactly.
to some extent, no, it's who would have thought? No, we've been doing this for quite some time regularly, so yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good accomplishment.
Hmm.
And as usual, we pick a topic. Just before this, and we discuss it among ourselves and with the people in the chat. So if you're there, feel free to join the conversation, ask questions, etc. It really, makes everything more engaging for us as well. Before we jump into the topic today, remember if you want to get notified, just click the notification icon, the bell or whatever, and you'll know when we go live, so you can see, you can join us. And today, the topic is: should we get rid of all agile ceremonies? And this is something that comes up a lot, right? Like especially with people who are doing Scrum and this kind of stuff, that there are certain things that are prescribed, but people don't see the value in them, and they stop doing them, and then things get worse sometimes. No, so it's a bit of a then if you do, then if you don't, and I think it will be interesting to discuss how do we see this, like what kind of ceremonies do we normally see, and maybe discuss a little bit what value we think it brings to whom, and whether we would decide to take some of them out if we had the chance. Sounds good. So just to set the context, what do we mean by agile ceremonies? Like, what are we going to be considering an agile ceremony? Because agile is a lot wider than just Scrum. No, I don't know who wants to start.
This is a question for us. This is
Yeah, yeah.
our
Yeah. What are we gonna
this is our cue to
exactly
jump
to
in.
jump in?
I thought you would explain the.
So we thought you were gonna do the whole talk, and we'll just sit here and
Exactly.
We'll
I
just
was
see
just
this.
listening. So
Yeah.
okay, yeah,
Uh-huh.
you go on.
Uh-huh.
You go.
Good.
So so well, so as you said, like Agile is an umbrella of like quite a few methodologies, and some of those methodologies they also have a few practices, and that's where some of the ceremonies come from. Um, Most of the time, we end up bundling a lot of stuff in our projects, and today, 21 years or 21 now. When was it? 21 years since Agile was the Agile Summit. Like we bundle everything together. We call Agile. We don't even know. We don't even remember where some of the the practices come from. Which one are practices? Which one are things? But like I think that there are common things that we see in a lot of those projects. And Jose, like maybe you can give us like which one is a practice, where they come from and stuff if you want. But we have things like, for example, product backlog refinement. Well, some people using Scrum, they will use sprints. That we work in a iteration kind of stuff, like in Scrum we call sprints. We normally have demos, which in Scrum is called differently, right, Jose? You mentioned something else that's called
Sprint
like
reviews.
review.
Sprint reviews.
sprint reviews. We have the stand-ups or daily meetups. We have retrospectives, sprint planning, story refinement, estimation, code reviews, like loads of release planning. We have loads of different things that people do, and that generates a lot of frustration in projects. And it's common for us to hear um, a lot of developers, and not sometimes not even developers, other roles as well, say, "Hey, we have all those meetings, and we don't have time to actually do proper work," and they are all frustrated about those meetings. So just yeah, so maybe we can pick some of them to
So
discuss.
for the purpose of this, then it's safe to say that we're calling ceremonies to all of those meetings, let's call them, that are associated a lot with working in an agile way. Let's put it that. So we're including code reviews and that kind of stuff, whether
Yeah,
some framework tells you you should do it or not, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah.
All
All
right.
the meeting. I think yes. All the meetings is probably a good way of putting it, right? All the different places where you have to meet and talk or demonstrate or do something, right? Or
Hmm.
listen, right? I'll pick one. I'll pick my favorite or not favorite. the daily stand-up.
So this you're picking one
Would
to
you?
remove,
Okay.
to get
Let's do
rid
this. We
of.
pick one.
I wanna remove it.
Exactly.
I've
We
been
pick one.
sarcastic.
Everyone says if they would remove it or not, and then we discuss.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
I wanna remove. I wanna get rid of the daily stand-up.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Right.
uh-huh.
I'll tell you
Oh,
why.
mm-hmm.
Because it invariably becomes a case of self-aggrandization, or um, kind of there's a bunch of characters in there, right? So I think it's good to kind of go through these different characters. There is the one that takes up almost like all of the time allocated, because you meant to not take more than a few couple of minutes or something. The one that takes 10 minutes or whatever, just going through in detail what they've done, just to show how much work that they did. Right? There's that kind of one. Then there is the kind of person that is um, not very interested, and is just kind of showing up into the meeting, and will just say the first thing that happens, like the smallest thing that they can think of, that will take one sentence to describe, and that's it. Doesn't matter whether they're communicating or not. Then there is the one that thinks that they're the boss, and goes, uh-huh, good, uh-huh, good to everybody else. Then there is the one that is kind of looking out the window, not really listening, and doesn't even care if other people think that they are listening or not. And there are a few others as well.
Man, like you, like man, sorry to interrupt, but like this is so much, so good material for someone like with good skills in video or animation to create all those stereotypes that you can find on
There's probably a video already on YouTube with
yeah,
all
yeah.
these daily
I can,
Scrum
I'm
anti
sure.
yeah,
patterns. I'm
because I
sure
can
of it.
think
I'm
about
sure of
like that one that is always late, just like hoping
Yeah,
that his turn is gone.
yeah,
Right, so
yeah,
that is the one that doesn't know what to say. That's
yeah.
like what I've done yesterday.
Okay,
Yeah.
we get the point. So going back to the to the topic, yeah. So you would get rid of it because basically is you don't see it as very effective. Is that
Yeah,
it?
yeah. I have very rarely see it as effective, because it happens every day. People get complacent. It just becomes a thing that people go through the motions. The idea is for the team to align at the time. And in my view, there are other ways of aligning as well. Often it's about like what I did yesterday, what I'm gonna do today, and what is blocking me. Well, why do you have to wait until the morning comes when you have to say that what's blocking me?
This
Why
would
do
be
you
precisely my point.
and why
Yeah.
do you have to say what I did yesterday? I mean, shouldn't the team know, if you are quite well gelled as a team, that what you are working on and what you're gonna do today is normally usually the same thing. And if you're gonna pick something new, there are easier and quicker ways to just notify the team asynchronously what the next thing that you're gonna work on, or just pick the next value. And why does it matter,
Okay, I'm
right?
gonna challenge that, right? So because like although I agree and I also feel frustrated about quite a few of those daily meetings, the challenge that I have for counseling that is mainly now that we are mostly working remotely, right? That thing that we had in the past, where we had informal conversations, we used to have lunch together, we had far more opportunities to actually have a chat. But as now we are working remotely, we don't even see each other. We just, sometimes we are pairing with someone, and then we have that pairing session going on. Sometimes you're working on your own. But if we don't create, uh, today we need to be more disciplined in creating the time for syncing up as a team. So how would, if we got rid of the dailies, how would we, how can I say, get the benefit that the daily is supposed to bring? That is that continuous alignment, let's say.
So I would say, and I'm kind of like, I think it's a useful thing for remote, but I'm playing devil's advocate here.
Hmm.
So I would say there should be a stream of conscience. Like if you don't have the direct a kind of co-location, then a daily stand-up is not enough for you to align. So you should have a stream of conscious going on during the day. Some people even have open kind of video call conf, so they all have it. I mean, I know Jose is laughing because he has it with his team, and so there should be a stream of conscious to actually allow you to come closer, especially because you're remote, and relying on a single daily stand-up that has all the dysfunctions that I just mentioned could be actually putting too much value on something that may not already be working in terms of alignment.
No, so I'm a bit of, both. It's great to, especially if you do it in the morning, to see people in the morning have an opportunity to say good morning, how did it go yesterday, whatever, like just catch up a little bit, no, which is not the purpose of the daily, but it's good to have that. Hey, what's up, no? So I like that. But I am with Matt in this, right? I feel like, especially now that we're working remotely, that there are better ways to get both things: one, the team connection, and the asynchronous communication, or syncing, no, syncing up and alignment, right? And I think those things should happen in a just in time basis, right? Hey, I'm blocked, I need help. You put it in the common channel. People in front of the team will jump in and say, hey, give me 15 minutes, I'll be with you, no, and we get it unblocked, we move on, etc., right? So that idea of synchronizing, and especially removing blockers, or I'm going to need help or whatever, it should be happening all the time, not just in the daily. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as for visibility, just keep your board updated, give your, that kind of stuff. Some people use it as well to synchronize, no, the board, the status of the board. Well, if you finish your task, just go and finish it. You move it to done, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
So to be fair, like I understand all of that, and I think that for everyone listening, like it's important that we will be doing devil's advocates in all sides, right? I think that to stretch our own biases and comfort zone. So the I agree. In terms of blocks, you should not wait. If you're blocked, there should be a much faster way to communicate that and interact. But I like the idea of having a time, mainly now that we are all remote, as I said, that is a sync up point, that we all join in, we do a quick sync up. Because sometimes, like looking at a task that someone is doing on a board is not enough to understand everything. And also, of course, we don't want a lot of details. If you want a lot of details, you have a proper meeting, we go into the details. But like sometimes just getting that overall pass very quickly, where each person describes what they're going through, I think that is still a good thing. Does it need to be every day? Does it need to be in the morning? That's a different question. But a regular sync up point, a quick one, as it should be, 10 minutes.
There needs to be
15
alignment,
minutes.
constant alignment, basically, is what we're trying to say, no? And if you're getting that through dailies, that's great, no? But if you're getting it in a different way, that's also great, right? So don't be too dogmatic about this stuff. Just
And
if
if
it's
you're not
working,
getting
try to find, exactly, if it's not working, try to find something that works for you. And there are many contexts for this. And again, the people the other day were laughing because I always said depends, no? If you're working across time zones or whatever, like maybe you don't want to do the thing in the morning, you want to, but there are many other things that could be in place that could help with that synchronization, especially, right? So just find something that will help you. Should we move on to
I
another
think
one?
so. Yeah. So there are a lot of people, like, although I personally would remove a different one, but like,
So which one
because
would you remove? Which one would you remove?
I would remove the sprints, the sprint boundaries. But because there are so many, we can go. I'm happy for us to go back to that one. But there are a lot of people on the live chat now talking about the retros. Those are the ones that people are probably have a bigger issue with. Maybe we could take that one. So we are removing the retro. So what?
I disagree. I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. I think if anything, that's the only one that you shouldn't be removing, because for me that is at the core of any team that is working properly, there is this moment of reflection and sense making together that needs to happen. And for me, that's what the retro is, right? Like it's that point where you can take stock and really change, affect, etc., etc. Whether you do that, I'm in favor of doing it quite often. Not necessarily maybe every week or every sprint or whatever. You can have a bit of an on demand, but you should have some cadence to make sure that is. And the problem that I see with retros and why people, and we had an episode about this, by the way, like why retrospectives
I think it's one of
don't
the
work.
first ones.
I was actually looking for it because I remember us discussing that at length.
I think it's the first
So we
one.
talked about a lot of the problems with
Yes.
retrospectives and all that. And for me, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, for people watching, talking about retrospectives on the live channel, or even if you are watching these afterwards recorded, episode number 2 is called "Why Retrospectives Don't Work." We had a full hour just on retrospectives.
Just shitting on retrospectives now.
I strongly
A little bit.
recommend that you watch that one because it was quite. I found it
Anyway,
quite
Jose
insightful.
has since have had a whole year of thinking, and now he thinks the word.
He had like
Go on, tell us.
No.
37 or 8 episodes to think
the title
about.
was a bit. The title was a bit clickbaity, yeah. But I do think that retrospectives are something that you need, but you need to execute them properly, right? So if your retrospective is not working, it's just like the daily or any other meeting that is not working. You need to find out what's wrong and try to make it work. And that is not always easy because again, you need trust, you need safe space, you need people to be able to talk about things and not blame each other, and then you need people to act on stuff afterwards, right? Which is another problem that you always see. Oh, everything is kumbaya and great. Oh, how good! And then all of the actions fall through, right? Like nothing gets done. You're not improving. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
Go on, Mesh.
So you can take it back to the same thing that we had for stand up, right? The value in here is constant review of your practice, what you're doing, and to improve, or to try to improve, or to make some experiments to improve. And if you can find other ways of doing it, and that's also fine. I think you don't have to have retrospectives to be able to help you improve, right? You don't have to have everybody having to sit in the same place. Half of them don't give a crap about the thing that the other half are talking about in terms of improvement. In order to improve, there are other ways of bringing about improvements as well, right?
Yeah.
Like what? Like what?
So there is the kind of individual agency, right? So everyone can be a leader, and allowing training people up and making sure they fully understand what that means, so that when you see something needs to be better, that you take ownership of that and make it happen, right? And if you can lead and get the team to improve in that regard, if the whole team was trained well enough and really knew how to take on leadership and initiative on the things that they see require improvement, you would not need retrospectives necessarily.
Yeah, I also like. For me, it's not a clear cut. It's not like, no, this is the most important thing. Like I put in there the Fireside chat number 2, but I have big issues with retrospective. It's probably among all the meetings that we have, like in a project, right? Among all of them, is the one that annoys me the most. We have a retrospective. Oh shit. Okay. There we go again, right? so again, because like, of course that I understand the value, and again, we discussed this at length in the past, right? So, and I know that all of those ceremonies or meetings, if they are done well, they have a purpose, right? So each one is supposed to provide some sort of value to someone. And of course, the devils are in the details, right? So the devil is in the details. So if it's not done well, then it just becomes a waste of time. But the retro itself, because it's quite a large meeting, which involves the entire team, loads of activities and stuff, it can be quite shit when it's not done well.
No, I know, and a waste of time in that
Yeah.
sense. I completely agree with that,
And they're
and that was
difficult
kind
to
of
do
the
well.
point on the, and
They
that
are
was kind of the
difficult to do
point.
well.
Yeah, they're difficult to do well. You need really good facilitation skills. You really need to, know what you're doing. But if they're done well, they can be very, very powerful, right?
Yeah, but I still feel that we can replace them.
There's one thing that I disagree with, right? Because, for instance, Mash was saying you have individual agency, etc. That's fine, but that does not solve the point that I was mentioning before, which is the learning as a group, yeah, part. Because you can learn individually, but what you see, the whole PCA, or connecting, and the learning loop kind of thing, what you see as an individual may be different from what other people see from the site. So there is an aspect of group learning in there, that all bringing all of these people in to learn together. I'm not saying it has to be in a retrospective. There are many, you have action learning sets, you have a lot of other postmortems. I'll talk about postmortems as well, but the idea of the group making sense of what is happening together, I think, is quite powerful, and it's, again, quite interesting, and you can do on your own, right? Like, if two people talk, it's that those two people. It's not the
But
whole.
as
Yeah.
you said, you don't need a retrospective for that. You can have focused conversations. So if someone is
Exactly.
leading and sees a
But
problem,
this is the thing. Are we talking about cargo cult retrospectives, or are we talking about, because retrospectives, on they have also an objective. Yes, you can look at the typical thing is, let's look at what we did this week, what worked, what didn't work. You can also have focused retrospectives on, hey, this happened. How do we solve it? How do we? This is kind of like a post-mortem or incident analysis, or root cause analysis, all of that stuff, right? Like, it's the same. It's a retrospective.
yeah,
as well.
just to be the one I'm arguing against is the general retrospective.
Yeah,
where
same.
Is that, it's
Same.
been 2
Same.
weeks? What did you
Same
like?
here.
What didn't you
Yeah,
like? That kind of,
every 2 weeks we do a retro, and then we discuss what is going well, what's not going so well, and quite often this is what we discussed in the previous episode. Like, they become not focused. We end up picking topics that are not the most pressing concerns. That's why a lot of times actions are not followed up. So no one follow up on the actions, because it's not the real issues that people are suffering. So I like focus meetings. We are going to come in to discuss this.
Okay. I can totally get on board with that. And also, even when you find retrospectives that are like, but everything is going well, we already have observability, we already have continuous integration, we already have, like, we all have all of these things that some teams want to only hope to have. No, what do we do now? We are perfect. Well, what if instead of doing every 2 weeks, we wanted to release each week? What if we, wanted to get to 0 bugs? What if we, you can always challenge, use whatever KPIs you have to kind of challenge what, and start thinking about what you would need to change in the current process that's already stable, no, in order to hit that target. So again, there's many ways in which you can use them powerfully.
But now you are talking about being focused, like a retrospective has a theme, has a purpose of that what you're going to be retrospecting on, right? So, or introspecting in a way, instead of just saying, let's talk about, like, whatever,
but sometimes,
right?
again, sometimes it's not that bad to have the general retrospective. Sometimes the thing that you need to talk about is the thing that happened those 2 weeks. Right, like that's
but it doesn't need to be like every
everyone...
2 weeks for us to say, hey,
that's fine.
let's
Fine.
pick a topic.
But I wouldn't.
every 2 weeks.
The thing is, I wouldn't remove it. That's one of the things that I wouldn't remove, to be honest.
Right. Okay. I still think I would, if I had to pick one among them all. Probably
You
the
would kill that one.
I would kill, and I tell you what, like, I think we even discussed that before, because although we have that in normal projects, like with clients and stuff, we don't have so often with our immediate team. We don't feel the need for that, and that's, for me, is already a sign that we don't need, because every time that we have an issue to discuss, we end up, okay, this is not going well, let's have a meeting to talk about that, and then we resolve that thing. And but anyway, we can discuss internal things later.
I would get rid of them, but it's not I've already given my top one, and I have a second
Okay,
one.
it's not the
Kind
it's
of
not the
waiting in the
okay.
wings. I
What
think
else do
maybe
we?
retrospective is the third one I'd give up.
No,
What?
for me, like it was the second, but now that we discussed and it came back to my mind, it will be the first. So the retrospective is the first one I would kill.
And
But my
Jose will
second
keep,
one,
if he had to keep one thing, he would keep the retrospective.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Wow.
So my second one, okay. So the one that I would remove, and again, I just want to reemphasize for everyone watching either live or
No,
later on.
sorry, Sandro, but I think we should get Jose to pick one because he hasn't picked one
Oh
yet.
yeah, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay. So
Which one you need to remove one?
I need to remove one.
Yeah.
I could probably. By the way, I'm jumping out of Scrum now. Yeah.
Okay.
I could probably remove the downstream kind of thing from Kanban, right? Like the coordination with downstream, that kind of stuff. Kanban has, because we're talking about meetings in general, so now I'm changing because the next one will be sprint planning. I think that has its merit.
That was gonna be my second one.
Exactly, that's gonna be your second one. Okay, we'll go back to that. Well, let's choose that one. Let's choose that one. I don't want.
No. You can pick the
No, you
downstream.
choose.
You
Yeah.
can pick the
Yeah.
downstream.
All right, yeah. So there is so Kanban has, I think, is 7 feedback loops. Yeah. So you have something at the beginning, replenish. You do all of this stuff. You have the ongoing. Let's call it daily, right? And then you have the delivery side. Then you have something at the strategic side on quarterly. You have service. You have a risk mitigation and all of that stuff. And then you have the operational coordination within stream side of things. I will probably get rid of that one because that one I think also can happen
As we
real
go
time
along.
as we go on. If you're really going through a flow, right, and we're constantly going through that, like by the time that something's going to get done, etc., you're already coordinating with someone else to do that as part of finishing, basically, right? So that one I think it's there for completeness. No, it's like, oh, what are we missing here, what did we, right? But I would probably remove that one.
Are you saying that this is something that can be automated at the downstream?
It can be automated or it can be part of the workflow that you already have, right? So there's a service delivery thing, which is how well are we doing. Yeah. That one I would keep because that's like a kind of how fit for purpose are we, that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And you have the two at the end, and then you have the strategic one and the risk assessment one, which is like a retrospective sort of, like what are we going to do to deal with this, and then you have this thing that is more for coordination. So again, I feel like that coordination should happen during the work. You don't really need a cadence, let's say, for be able to do that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that, yeah, that kind of coordination, as I said, if it can be automated, it should be. And once something is in play and it's being done, like the whole idea of like continuous delivery is that it should be in production.
So these aligns to the one that I would remove, because I mentioned that I probably would remove the sprint boundaries, assuming that, of course, that most teams that we know are using some sort of a Scrum and they have the sprint boundaries, right? So we normally work with a 2-week iteration or 2-week sprint. But if I had to pick one, like my second one to remove would be sprint boundaries, and that would become more.
You classify that as a ceremony, Sandro?
I classify as not as a ceremony, but it triggers ceremonies, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, because once you have the sprint boundary, we end up with a specific cadence for demos, a specific cadence for this sprint planning. So sprint backlog, because you have a product backlog, but you end up.
That's why, well, like exactly. So it's about Because if you think about it, if you remove sprint planning, are you not removing the well, the thing is, if you're saying that you remove sprint boundaries or you remove cadence, right?
We are
Then
not removing cadence.
No,
We are
cadence.
removing cadence still exists. What we don't have is an artificial cadence of
A beat.
a time box.
Exactly. A beat that we
no,
need
but
to follow.
Yeah.
isn't cadence all about a beat? Sorry, I'm just being being very
That,
pedantic about the language.
no, isn't cadence about a beat? Yes, it is about a beat. But I
But
think what he's referring to is flow, not so much
yes,
cadence.
yes,
What you want is continuous
yes,
delivery of value. You want
exactly.
flow through the system, yeah,
This is
uh,
precisely what I
and
was saying.
and triggering, having a beat, or in this case an artificial beat, trigger that flow is what I
Well,
think
Yeah.
an
you're
artificial beat does not like no artificial. I don't know, but even in Scrum, even when you have sprints, you can still release value as and when it becomes ready.
No, you can. You could do that, uh, but you should plan for 2 weeks. We freeze those requirements for 2 weeks, assuming that we are doing 2 week iterations. So there is a secondary backlog that you go from a product backlog that you take the top. We do some estimates, we do some refinements, we plan for those 3 weeks. So there is a lot of activity that happens because we chose to work in that time box period or a sequence
So we're
of
gonna
time
get rid
box
of
periods.
Scrum, basically.
Well, in a way, yes.
no, the
But
time
there,
boxing, the
but
time boxing aspect of
Yeah, the
Scrum,
time.
yeah.
and then it
So
becomes bad
yeah,
Kanban.
but there are a few other things that I find value. For example, having a cadence of reviewing where we are, a cadence of demos. I don't think that it's feasible for us to demo every piece of work because, like, normally we are dealing with other stakeholders. We cannot just be calling them whenever you are finished and then you bring them all to see what a pair did. So we still need some planning, uh, but more long term, not so short term. So there are a few things that I like to have a rhythm, but the caveat in here, I think that Helder mentioned that in the chat, like that they are refining more often their work, and they are gradually. I don't know, I forgot how exactly he mentioned. Like he said that they removed the planning meetings because we are refining every day. Scrum is becoming a Kanban smoothly for us. This is precisely what I was saying, because like what I would say is, although I would like to remove the iterations, I call them the training wheels. I call Scrum almost like training wheels. When you are learning to ride a bike as a child, you have those training wheels. I'm not criticizing Scrum in here. I need to be very clear, right? So I believe that there is certain methodologies or approaches are more suitable depending on the level of maturity that team or organization has. And I believe that for teams that are still in the early days of agile practices or learning how to work in a more iterative way, Scrum is perfect. Those training wheels, having those formal for example, you need to plan for 2 weeks.
Having
You
a
need to
structure,
exactly having a structure.
You
it's
You
know,
need
like
to be
like
able to
German says that as well, and I've said that always, and I'm just like having a think about it, and I'd like to challenge that because we somehow think that Scrum is easy, but we've already said that stand-up meetings are very difficult to get right. Retrospectives are difficult to get right. Planning meetings we haven't even talked about are very difficult to
we
get
can
right.
pick it. We can pick
PRs
it
can
next.
be a real shit show. And we are now asking the most least experienced people to get the things right that even more experienced teams can't get
No,
right.
that I agree. Some teams do need that, uh, but to what extent that becomes a problem
so
more than a solution? Because the thing is, it's very easy to fall into cargo cult, right? So if you're telling people, okay, so you need to meet at this time, you need to do this, there's even a suggestion of times, how much time you need to spend in the meeting, etc., etc., right? and they do that without understanding why they're doing it, they may end up, getting product out, etc., but the underlying things that they need to understand, they don't understand. So basically, it's a great play. This is trademarked by Fran. Yeah, the Fran, if you're watching this, right? Scrum is a great place to start, is a terrible place to stay in, right? This is
Right.
this is why is it so yes, you want to give them a framework that they are able to use and have something to hold on to, but you don't want to stay there. And the problem is that a lot of companies stay there, and that is a problem. Then it becomes cargo call. Then it becomes, you start getting all of these, instead of being a solution, instead of being a pull approach kind of thing, right? Like if you're okay, so we need to know what we're gonna build next. Maybe we should have a meeting about that,
Mhm.
right? There you go. The
But
plan.
why not do
We
that
need
at the start?
to. Oh,
But
we're almost finished.
so
Should we already start looking at the next thing, right? So that's what I mean. No?
yeah,
That
because like
reflects.
Mesh, like because this is what I was trying to say before. Like the I think although Scrum is not easy, and I take your point, but like going from whatever they were coming from, either no methodologies at all or a very structured methodology, to Agile, if they don't come with some structure to learn how to work in smaller increments, they're going to kill themselves. Because like I've seen, like even in some existing clients that I've seen, like for example, oh, we use Kanban. When you actually look at it, or we don't like some use Kanban, uh, some of the companies that we've seen, they don't have it. They have chaos. They don't have Kanban. So and I believe that
You have chaos. You don't
No,
have
you have
Kanban.
chaos.
I'm not
I
saying
love
that
it.
we teach
No,
teach
there's
people.
some
So this is the thing.
a
Like
teacher. Yeah, that's
no, but
Yeah,
even
because then
like if I
everyone
say
says,
to
"Oh, we are doing
people,
whatever. We do
"Oh, don't,"
whatever needs to be done when it's needed,"
but
and then
the
they'll
alternative
fail.
is not Kanban. The alternative is not Kanban. The alternative is some basics. So my point is that we throw a big framework at people and say, okay, just attend, do the ceremonies, and eventually you'll get to understand why. But and Kanban is the same. Kanban has a lot of big body of knowledge behind it, and you throw something at them that is even less structured, and you kind of get them to figure out why, and that's
I
of
I
course it's
I,
going to be
I
even more
disagree.
chaos.
I
Chaotic.
disagree with that. I
Okay,
disagree with that
but
because
that wasn't the main point I was trying to make, by the way.
okay,
The point
okay.
that I'm trying to make is that you teach people something basic. You teach people the idea of being close to the customer. You teach people on stakeholder management, on communication within the team. A lot. You teach them values and ways of smaller ways of getting those things right, and not a whole framework.
But that
I
is
don't feel
what
that those
Kanban does.
things are
But that is
easy.
what Kanban does, actually. Like so the whole point is you have the values and you have certain practices that you need to do. You need to visualize your work. That's all about communication. You need to manage the work, the flow, right? So those things are the basics. The problem is you do need someone to help you get started with something like that. So you need someone who goes through the okay, so what are you working on right now? Let's put all of that stuff in here. Okay, before this stuff was here, where was it? No, and when you finish with it, what is it going to be? Like you need someone to kind of help you through visualizing the workflow and oh, and when something really urgent comes up, do you treat that, does that wait there until someone picks it up, or does that, oh, maybe we should represent it like that kind of translation, initial translation. You do need
Yeah.
someone to help
Well,
you,
then my
but
point
basic
exactly.
wise, but
That's
the basics wise is quite
that's
simple.
exactly where I was coming to, is that you need someone to actually help and coach and mentor and so on. You don't need a framework. It may come later. The first you need, if people don't know how to work well in a software project, you start from the basics, and someone who's mentoring them, it does not have to be any framework at all. It can
But
be. quite easily, like it can be a step-by-step process where just they are providing a value and they are helping them explore the thing that works for them. It does not
Right.
need to be a
I,
framework.
I would challenge that, because like the what you are describing, you have the choice of taking something that already exists and provide a structure. Well, first of all, let's see if we agree in principle on something more basics. Do we agree that someone, as they are learning a completely new skill, a completely different way of working, it would be better to follow something than just say, hey, you now need to do something different and let them figure it out by themselves? It would normally, we say that people will, like the whole Dreyfus model of skill acquisition, all the different models, you end up copying first, you end up following, and then you get more familiar with the things and you start becoming more confident, you start improving, and then up until the point where you are at the level that you now can customize, create your own decisions, even create your own strategy and framework. Because even if you follow what you said, Mesh, like you will be teaching, well, we would be teaching someone our framework, because like we would just not be following Scrum or Kanban, but we would teach them, okay, if you are dealing with stakeholders, this is the basics that you need to know. If you are doing this, this is the base. And what you end up doing for someone totally new to the mindset is a new set of rules, but they are custom rules instead of something that they
Not
uh,
necessarily. So I think maybe I'm not articulating myself well. What I'm saying is that a whole set, like Scrum, Kanban, these things, they come with a whole set, right? What I'm saying is that within that whole set, and in fact, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about practices. We're talking about value. We're talking about that value can be gained in many different ways, and depending on the context, different things may be suited to you, right? So I'm not saying that you don't use Scrum or Kanban practice or so on. What I'm saying is that you don't throw the whole set at people. What I'm saying is that in order you teach people the value behind one thing, like constant improvement, and you say, well, okay, in Scrum there's retrospectives, there are these things, in Kanban there are other things, and so on. And these are the things that, and there's a lot of material behind it, and you can use it, but the actual value is this. The problem with the whole set is that often following the framework becomes the goal, and the conversation about value is actually diminished.
But this
And
is
from
where
my
I
personal experience, that not necessarily be the case, but that's how I see. That's the
but
problem I see with throwing the whole set at somebody.
I agree, I agree. But the thing is, with Kanban, you're not throwing the whole set of things, because what is easier? Yeah, I give you this framework, follow it. Yeah, even if it's very simple, which is what Scrum does. Or let's see what you're doing today, which is what Kanban does. Let's see what you're doing today. Let's make it visible, yeah, and then let's analyze that through these lenses. And this is what, it start where you are. Basically, the mantra is start where you are. Right? Is what is that you're doing today? I don't want to come and tell you, do a planning meeting. Do it like what are the meetings that you're doing today? Like what is it? What is the purpose of those things? And then you can start saying, oh, okay, so this is taking care of this is taking care of that. Like, okay, so where do you see the work? How do you know what's in progress or not, or what are people working on? How do you coordinate? Like, you start asking these questions and discover what the system looks like. Yeah, once you have it visible, then you can start applying all the stuff, right? And you one of the things that you do commit to improvement, right? Because if people don't want to improve, then there's nothing. You can visualize it all you want, but if people don't want to change it to improve it, that's not gonna help. So from that perspective, I do,
No, I
I
think
do
that
feel
there are
like
some
it's
aspects of Kanban that, of course, they are more discovery related, and they don't just throw a framework at you.
exactly. So you
But
have some principles there, but nobody's telling you how to apply those principles, and this is where I see the gap, right? Like you do need someone who really understands that thing to kind of help you guide. I mean, you can do it, right? But you will fall into the pitfalls of what they call proto kanbans and that kind of stuff, right? Where you have, oh, we need to have a board, let's have a board, and what we're going to do is we're going to have a swim lane per person, and then I'm going to be able to see what everyone is doing, no, and that kind of stuff. So it's okay, but it's already a step forward versus not having, not being able to
Yeah,
see
but
the
but
work,
the
and etc. Right. So it's an evolution from that point of view. Yeah.
Mhm.
Whether as Scrum is more along the lines of, listen, do this, boom, and stay there. Hopefully, if you do this, yeah, and you reflect on what you're doing, you may end up doing new things or changing things, no, except what I asked you to do, no, that will get you to where you want. And this is the part that that's where I don't see a lot of flexibility in there, right?
But
So
I don't think Kanban is also easy to adapt, because the kind of things that you're saying, like visualizing, putting post-its on the things that you're doing on a board is easy, but really understanding them and understanding the links between them and fully understanding the whole system and how it's not an easy thing to do. I agree with that. If you take a beginner who's not Scrum, at least in one way tells you like do this, whereas Kanban is giving you principle that you have to build, kind of kind of make sense of yourself for your own context, is even more difficult
yeah,
without.
but I think that you are underplaying. Is that the word that I'm looking for? Like
underestimating.
the underestimating. That's the word. Thank you. Of the things that you were saying, Mesh, because like what you were saying, like those principles that you said are not. They are simple for us that I have been. We've been doing agile for, well, we've been in this agile world for a very long time, but like getting someone from scratch teaching those things are also difficult,
Oh, I agree. I agree.
and I think that like for me, again, about teaching in general and people learning new skills in general, it's better at the beginning that you explain the situation. No one is saying that just throw something at them and say, hey, do that without questioning or without understanding. But even with the understanding, that doesn't mean that we're going to come up with a solution for that. So it's like you cannot, like, those are the problems. They understand the problem, but let's use this process, whatever that might be. Let's use this process for a while, and we're going to be doing that for a few months, and you're going to be working with that. And as we go along, you become more comfortable to start working a different way, which means that you moved on. You now learned a few new skills. At that point, there is a review and say, hey, now that you've been working like that for a period of time, what can we improve? What can we remove? What are the things? And then you go to the next level, next level. And I believe that those frameworks at the beginning, they provide a good starting point, a solid starting point that you can learn. And like Helder was saying, I think that someone to, for example, I would love to remove the sprint boundaries from some of our projects or in some places. But even when I try to do that, like there is a story that I told a few times when I was at UBS, even way before Codurance and stuff. We had a very mature team, a team that we felt that we were very good technically and process and stuff, and we decided to, everyone used Scrum, and we decided to remove the sprint boundaries. And after a few weeks, like probably like 3 months or something like that, we raised our hands and we called some of the agile coaches and said, look, we are in a mess again, right? So we realized that we were in chaos, as I said before. And that was not a metaphor, it was a real story. Like we said, like as we removed some of those ceremonies that we had, we are now working chaos, we lost control. And
But
then
I
we
think,
brought,
I think this is actually related. By the way, I agree that when you're training people, that you need to, sometimes they may not, you understand the value, they may not understand the value of a particular thing, and you get them to try it until that I totally agree. Even in the example that you just gave, you actually provided there's a key thing. You ask someone to come observe and help, and that's not a framework.
No.
That is somebody who has tried or understands
Yeah,
and understands the system of the
exactly.
team
But
and
again, that's
But
an
you need
adoption.
can
It's an
diagnose
adoption
and
thing.
help.
but
Yeah,
we need
it's
some degree of maturity to understand certain things, to be able to identify the blocks. You need a degree of maturity to start working in a slightly different way. We need just to start changing, trying a few things. Now you understand a bit more. Now you are already in the next level, and we are seeing the pain of the next level. And then we change again, and now we start. The status quo moves up.
You need a
And
certain maturity to work without supervision. That's the way I see it. I don't think a framework can replace supervision or mentoring.
no, but they can give you the basic skills to get there, right? So they can help you in your journey. Like I like what you mentioned, Jose, that Fran said. I think that's what I mentioned, the training wheels. Like, so we want to achieve a lot of things, and you cannot just throw to an inexperienced team, a bunch of people that just joined the industry, and say, hey, you need to achieve all of that, figure that out. Because they will need to try to figure out what the whole industry did in the past 30 years, right? So by themselves, on spot with pressure. So they can build on top of that knowledge. And then, as they build on top of that knowledge, then someone can keep helping them. Like, so I like the idea of a coach to some degree. I don't want to open that can of worms right now.
I'm not just
that's
talking about a
another
coach,
topic.
by the
That's
way.
another topic.
When I said supervision and mentoring, I don't just mean a coach.
No, I know you didn't, and that's why I didn't want to. So it's exactly that, but it's providing that support in whichever form. So that is someone or some other kind of support, company support that can help those teams to mature, to ask some questions, ask them people to step back, even offer different approach. Because again, like sometimes people visualize their problems, they visualize their inefficiencies. They just don't know how to solve them. They just don't know what to do with it, right?
But that's a
And
matter
that's
of
what.
that's a matter of expertise. Then
Mhm.
it's not a like having the knowledge to do it. And in that case, because this is the thing, right? Like this is why I wouldn't remove the retrospection. Sorry that I'm going back to that point. No, but if the group is mature enough or the team is mature enough to understand what they are lacking, then they can solve it. Even if they themselves don't have the skill set that is required for that, they can go out and try to get that and so on, right? If
Like
that is not happen, if that is not happening, even if you have the skills within the team, they wouldn't be able to do it, right? So
I agree, but I was thinking about like when we do product development or any architecture transformation or whatever else, we normally create a vision, right? So say, hey, it would be great if our architecture would be like that, or our product would be like that, and then we create the iterations towards that. If we take the same approach to process, right? Let's say that we have a team, and then Jose, like we have to say like how would we like to work? And let's say that we have this continuous flow. Say, well, you know what? We would like to be working in this way. Well, pick stuff, we work, and we release, and so on and so forth. So I was thinking, like, if we create a vision of what that workflow would look like, and then we say, where are we today? What is our current workflow? What are the current processes that we have? What are how is the organization is organized, right? So our teams are organized, departments, and so on. What would be the natural steps for that? And maybe there are a lot of intermediate steps where Scrum might be one of them, as you said, going back to Fran and say like if we would like to be there, we are quite far. What would be the next increment? So how could we start working for the next 3 months? So that we are a bit closer to where we would like to get. That could be an interesting evolutionary experiment,
well, that's how you're supposed, like for an organizational change, that's how you're supposed to
But I haven't
to
seen
drive.
that. Like maybe you did during your previous life, right? So before
My
Codurance,
previous life.
yeah. So, but
But
like
yeah, but that's precisely it. And also, you don't want to push it in the sense that, oh, do this, right? You want to find what are the pain points and what are the things that you can already do in order to relieve those pain points, and that will trigger moving on to the next thing and to the next thing, instead of coming in and saying, hey, by the way, this is the picture, right? From tomorrow, all of you, and I've seen both things, right? I once saw a company, oh, we need to have cross-functional teams. They were all siloed, etc. The CEO gave a presentation. From tomorrow, the finance, marketing, sales, development, you're all gonna sit on this table, at this table, right? That's it. That's my cross-functional teams. Work together, eh? I want everyone to be. Everyone's like,
I'll bash their heads together.
exactly. Right? It took a very, very, very long time to do something like that. So again, it's learning as well.
But I like the idea of a roadmap for a process.
Yes, of course. Like you're always like we do this, like for instance, if we do a review for I don't know, the testing strategy, path to production, all of that stuff. That's kind of what we do. Like, this is where you are today. This is how it could look like in the future. Let's start taking some steps in that direction. Yeah.
But you can't create a roadmap of process practices. You can create a roadmap of value. Even when you have a vision, you talk about value. You talk about what you want to be able to achieve, but you don't talk about how.
Sure. More or less.
Yes,
you don't talk about how, but you say this could be a way, and this could be a way, and this is what I'm saying. You provide options.
That's what I mean. You don't talk about how at the end. Your vision is not the how.
Exactly.
No. Your vision is not the how.
Your next step is the how.
Right. Yeah. But you can run experiment. This is what I never thought before. And this is, for example, in one of our projects, we had of course, we wanted this continuous flow, blah 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 blah, but we are light years ahead away of it. But for example, the QA was a separate department. So one of the things that we said, why don't we bring the QAs to work as part of the team now? And this was, for that organization specific, was a big change. For a lot of modern organizations, it's not, but for that organization, it was a big change. What we've never done was time box that experiment. So we are going to start working in some of the teams in this specific way, and we're going to have an iteration, like a planning, that we are going to take stock in 3 months' time and see if we are ready for the next step. So you see what I'm saying?
You also have to then, time boxing also means that you have to find success criteria if whether that experiment works.
No, exactly. So, but this is what I never thought about. For example, the same way that we plan evolutionary architectures or products and stuff, where we have some milestones and then we take stock and we plan. It's almost like this kind of approach for the process. It's like we sometimes put process in place. Okay, let's change the way we work. And then let's change again. But sometimes we lose track of where we are going, and we don't review at the right time. So we don't set the goals for those.
I hate to throw this in, but the capability maturity model kind of tried to do that in the old days. It's how mature is your organization over the stages. But we're not gonna stop.
Yeah, we are trying to remove agile ceremonies, and we are gonna because we want to be ISO compliant, right? So exactly. ISO or CMMI or whatever.
Exactly, CMMI. But by the way, I'd just like to break it to you that we completely went off on a tangent, although related, but not the thing about what we said.
So should we go back to
the practices that we can remove?
Yeah. So let's talk about the sprint planning, because that was a big one as well. Yeah. I'll start. Yeah. Sprint planning. You get there, and then anti-pattern, kind of. You start estimating or figuring out what it is
down into tasks.
Exactly, or breaking the things down into tasks. Maybe by the time you get there, you want to have that at least under control, right? Like it should be more about alignment. What is the goal that we're trying to achieve? Could we do this? Yes, no. And to be honest, it might. I know that this is again against the thing, but let's commit to what we think we can do, and if not, it's okay, people, right? Like, it's not like we're gonna try to do our best, and that's it. Let's move on, right?
Let me describe to you a sprint planning meeting, like usually they last about half a day. Yeah. they take the stories that come into the backlog for that iteration backlog. They take each story. They then say, okay, I've got to write the database scripts, I've got to do the tests, I've got to do, and and then, like, worst case scenario, they will even have a ticket write tests. But anyway, and then everyone says, okay, for each one of those database scripts, okay, planning poker, I think is 3 hours. Suddenly
Okay,
they make
then
the points to hours,
yeah, I can understand that.
and
Yeah.
and no one is listening. And this is what, but why? And like, for each one of those things, and you know what often happens, because there is an element there where people start almost implementing the thing in there, and one or two people are really interested in looking at how the implementation will unfold. There is a design thing, and there's implementation, but this is almost at the implementation level, and then no one else is interested, and the meeting is super boring. One or two people are vocal at different times, and then nobody, like, and then you know what that means? They can then now have a burn down, and then the burn down is massaged throughout the sprint. To just go down, so that the stakeholders are happy, whoever's looking at the burn down, they're happy. But and often
but
it happens, sometimes it goes like this, and then boof.
yeah,
That's also another
or
burn.
just stays like that, right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Just stays like
just flat lines. So no, but like like I know that we are already 1 hour into it, but like I think that I was speaking to one of our guys last week, and he was showing me a tool that he wrote himself, and he's keeping track of the amount of time that is taken in the meeting. So they do the planning, they do estimates, but they also track. He has a tool where he can fiddle with the numbers. For example, the number of hours or that they spend in meetings, and that calculates the number of people as well for the whole team. And as soon as they add those meetings in, it recalculates the estimate, which is quite a fascinating thing. He said, look, if we spend this amount of time, our capacity will be this. If we remove a person from the project, the capacity will be this. Of course, this is not accurate. There are loads of, I don't want to go into the details of all the subtleties, because you cannot be so scientific about that and measure the impact that a person has, because people have different impacts, right? But what is cool is that, maybe to start wrapping up, is we need to question the value of those meetings, because quite a few of those meetings, they involve the entire team. It's the whole team that is stopping. And if you think about, in a sprint, the amount of meetings that are had with the whole team, all of a sudden we are talking about 20-30% of time is spent in meetings. Am I against those meetings? Not necessarily, as long as they are valuable, as long as they make the other 70% of actual producing features and code and changing systems efficient, right? They are essential, so that we are, whenever we get to change things, they are the right things to be changed. But like, if we are spending this amount of time without having that return, because it's a significant impact, we should question them. We should remove them. And if we should remove them, then how we should get the benefit that that meeting was supposed to provide. And I think that's the message probably that I would.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I would say always understand the value, and go from the value first, and all these things, judge them against the value that they're meant to provide. And if you can fully understand the value behind things, you may be able to run those meetings better, or not have them at all and have something else. But at the very least, you'll be able to run those meetings better. But understand the value. And that was my point for a lot of the other things that I was saying, is that is something that the value, the conversation about the value of all these things gets often left behind, just because it's a cargo cult. It is the way of doing things. Is that
Because it's the way it's been taught as well.
yeah,
No, it's like, hey, no, we do this, and when we do the planning, and then you understand what the practice is, but you don't understand what is behind it. So before, when we were discussing what topic to pick, you said, you mentioned that interview, right? And
Yeah.
hey, if you had out of all of the agile ceremonies, let's say, or events in Scrum, if you had to remove one, what would it be and why? I think that's a great question. And I
Yeah.
think it was, who was it?
It was Francesco. Francesco, if you are watching this,
You're watching this,
you inspired
great
this
question.
episode.
Good question.
Great question. I'm going to copy that question because it forces you to really think about what it is that you are doing with that, right? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? And I think that's something that gets left behind. And this is why you have so much cargo code and things don't work and so on. Because if it's not working, change it. But you need to be clear about what it is that you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
No, in order to evaluate whether it's working or not. No, and also to find alternatives to it, right? So I love that question. So
Cool.
I'm gonna copy
All
it.
right. Cool. I think it's time to wrap up, right?
Yeah.
We only got to like 3 or 4. But I guess the important part is, you can kill all of them as long as you understand. I'll wrap up my own part. You can kill all of them as long as you understand what it is that you're trying to achieve and you find a way to get that done, right? Like whether it is, aligning people around the project, or it is learning about how we're working together, whether it is, removing impediments, blockers, etc. Just, understand what you want to achieve. That is true agility in my book, and adapt to that. The rest is just tools.
Yeah, exactly. So same here. So, well, that's all from me. I think I already mentioned my wrap up. So.
Cool.
Mash, do you want to say anything?
Well, I've done my wrap up as well, mate.
Okay, so for everyone who's still with us, thank you for all your questions and comments. I really appreciate that. Remember, if you liked this chat, click the notification and the alerts button. We'll get to you get a notification when we're going live. We do this every week, and hopefully we'll see you here next time.
Thanks, everyone.
For listening.
All right.
Take care.